I'm Kimberly Atkins Stohr, and welcome to Justice by Design, because justice does not just happen. It is done by design, by the hard work of the people who are committed to making a change. And that's what we look at here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe and follow us right here. And on your podcast, you can follow us wherever you get your pods. And don't forget to give us 5 stars so that other people can find it. You know, representation is important. That's the very nature of our government. We have a representational democracy. And that means the people who are elected, whether it's in the highest offices here in Washington or in your local school boards, they should reflect us. And that means they should look like us. They should look like Americans in all our complexities and diversities and differences. But we know from the present day and from our history that that is usually not the case. It really never has been. And that's certainly true when it comes to women in our political power centers. You know, history is replete with examples of our government not representing women equally. It wasn't until the last century that women even got the right to vote. Think about that, how recent that was. And ever since the height of the suffrage movement, women have never achieved complete parity. We make up 51% of the population. But what do we make up in terms of our representation in government? How many women presidents have there been out of 45? One who was elected 2 separate times. 0. How many women are there right now in the US Senate? Just 25 out of 100. That's just a quarter. Only just over 28% of the House of Representatives are made up of women. And even within that, there is a lack of diversity within the women that we do have. More of the women are Democrats than Republicans. More of the women are white than of color. And meanwhile, the most pressing issues that voters are talking about in this election year, they affect everybody, to be sure, but they affect women in a unique way. I'm talking about reproductive rights. I'm talking about access to affordable childcare. I am talking about fixing the gender wage gap. I'm talking about access to business capital, especially for women-owned businesses. These are issues that are facing everyday Americans, but they are hitting women hardest. So why does it feel like women are being left behind? You know, I have 2 women joining us today to get to the bottom of why we are here, but more importantly, to talk about the solutions to putting women at the center of the table when it comes to these political decisions. Well, I have 2 women joining me today to discuss solutions for the gender gap in our political power centers. Tara Setmayer is co-founder and chief executive officer of the Seneca Project, a bipartisan super PAC led by women dedicating to mobilizing women voters. And A'shanti Gholar is the president of Emerge, the nation's only organization dedicating to recruiting, training, and empowering Democratic women. Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining us on Justice by Design.
Thank you for having me.
So, Tara, I want to start with you. Tell me about the Seneca Project.
Well, it's such a pleasure to be with you, Kim. I mean, this has been an extraordinary election season, and what an extraordinary time to be a woman in America, uh, both good and bad. I think that we are at an inflection point in our country where women are going to save this democracy. And when my co founder, Michelle Kinney, and I came up with the concept for the Seneca Project earlier this year, we were just looking at the political landscape and saying, who's speaking to just regular, everyday, middle of the road women? And it didn't seem like there were really any organizations were doing that. It was more from a political lens or from an issue specific area. And we just felt that regular everyday women who are just out here trying to make it, trying to raise their families, trying to pursue their careers, that they may have not been as politically engaged, but felt that there was a need to pay attention, that no one was really speaking to them. A lot of times we see being spoken at. Right? And so we said, well, we're women. we're middle of the road. I spent 27 years in the Republican Party, as many people know, and left the party in 2020 after Trump decided to not concede the election. I was a never Trumper. I never supported him. But my co-founder, Michelle Kinney, she comes from Democratic world. And we met working at the Lincoln Project for years as a, pro-democracy, never Trump group. And one of the things that we did, we were a messaging organization and we were speaking very directly to people. And so we said, we think it's just so important in this election cycle, given the attack on women's rights. We've never seen anything like this where a right had been taken away, and that it impacts all women. It doesn't matter if you have a D or an R next to your name. If you're bleeding out in an emergency room because the state you live in has now criminalized women's health care, no one cares who you voted for. That doesn't matter. And this is a conversation that we need to take the political labels off of it and just speak together as women in solidarity that we actually don't care if you voted for Trump twice before, as long as you don't vote for him this time, because there's too much at stake. Literally, our lives as women are at stake based on who's in power post November. So Seneca Project was born out of the idea of bringing a coalition of women together, and male allies too, similar to what happened in 1848 at the original Seneca Falls Convention. That was a coalition effort where women were tired of being treated as second class citizens in America and said enough is enough, and brought together a coalition of women and male allies. You had abolitionists from Frederick Douglass to Sojourner Truth, as part of that movement, and bring that to a modern day advocacy to get women galvanized. Because I think that when you galvanize women, there's nothing stopping us. We are the majority of the country, and
Yeah.
we voted higher propensity rates. So that's how the Seneca Project was born. We come at it from a bipartisan perspective, and we firmly believe, like I said, that women are going to be the ones to save this democracy. And now that we have Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, I think it has reinvigorated women voters in this country to really pay attention to what's at stake and the stark choice between the Democrats' future vision and what Republicans are talking about, just taking us back, and we won't do that.
Yeah. And I want to get to that coalition and the comparisons to Seneca. But first, Ashanti, I want you to tell us more about Emerge.
Yes. It's a very exciting time for us here at Emerge because our movement was born out of the vice president's first race for district attorney. Our co-founders were friends with her, and they saw that here is this great woman running for office, but where's the tools, where's the resources, but most importantly, where's the network of support? And if it's like this for a great woman like Kamala Harris, who is in a blue progressive city of San Francisco, in a blue progressive state of California, what is it like for other women in other states? So we are excited that next year we're celebrating 20 years of our movement. We have 24 affiliates across the country. We have trained over 6,000 women to run for office, and we currently have over 1,200 serving in office, from United States Cabinet Secretary Deb Haaland to members of Congress to governors, secretaries of state, state ledge, mayor, city council, school board, sheriff, prosecutor, DA. We train at all levels of office because we know when we really break this down, there are 520,000 elected offices in this country. Women were 51% of the population. We don't hold 51% of those offices. We are around 20% and under for
Mm.
all offices. And when we want to get into it some more and talk about parity, we're nowhere close near it having parity in those offices, having parity in states, but also having parity amongst women from different lives and different backgrounds who we need at the table, bringing that lived experience that allows for us to do great change for our communities. And through our program, we demystify what it takes to run for office. I tell women, just think about everything you have already done today. You've taken care of yourself. You've probably taken care of someone else. You've helped people. You've probably gone to work, dropped off some kids, paid some bills. All of those things are tools and skills that you need to be a great elected official. You already have it in you. What we do at Emerge is we just help you hone it to make you a great candidate and then a great elected official.
So I love that. And I want to talk a little bit more about some of the unique barriers that are in place that prevent women not only from running for office, as you said, Ashanti, but also keep women from being fully engaged at every level, whether it's in organizations and grassroots and other things. And I know some of them are actual structural barriers. But first, I want to talk a little bit more, and I'll start with you, Ashanti, about the attitudes that can
Hmm.
keep women from being
Yeah.
able to reach that parity.
Well, let's be clear. As women of color, we're playing in a system that was not built for us. This system was built for straight white men who own land. They never anticipated the participation of black and brown people, never ever thought women would have a seat at the table. So, what all of us are doing is we're disrupting this power structure, and that scares a lot of people.
Mm,
But for women, we see that power structure. We see those barriers. We know that this was not built for us. So a lot of them, they'll do that internal, well, the politics isn't for me, especially when we talk about viability, electability. I cannot stand those words because that's just code for straight white men who can self fund his race and win.
indeed.
That is what those words mean, and it gets into our heads at such a young age. I see it with my niece who loves Secretary Hillary Clinton. She called her Miss Clinton. I mean, almost got my family kicked out of the Nevada caucuses because she kept yelling, I'm with her at the Bernie Bros. Like, that's how intense my niece was.
Good for
But
her.
the day after the election, I said to her, Princess, would you ever want to run for office? And she said, no, TT Shani, they were just so mean to
Ugh.
Miss Hillary. Our girls saw that. So even when we had Secretary Clinton, who's trying to get through the sexism, the misogyny, raising the money, how good does she look? What's up with those clothes? The hair? Why doesn't she laugh? Why is she laughing? They saw that and
Yeah.
they internalized that. So if our young girls are seeing it, then we know other women, see it too, especially if they're living in areas where everything is still very male dominated. And you have to be told that you have to have a certain network, you have to have a certain job, you have to have a certain lifestyle. There's just all of these barriers, structural and just also societal, that are
Hmm.
put on women that say, you're not good enough to be not only at the table to run for office, but in politics. And like that is what we have to break down. And we did see a lot of it after 2016. We had a huge surge of women who came to emerge wanting to run for office. These organizing calls that have been happening these past weeks, predominantly women, but given the props to the guys, they were getting it done. White dudes for Harris. I see ya. I see ya. But I think that's why it's important for us to have these conversations, because even still with the visual, we have to let them know that there is room for them in this political ecosystem.
Yeah, and on that point, I mean, 2 points that you make that I wanna underscore. I mean, the example that is being set for young women, we're seeing it even with, Kamala Harris's, just over week-old,
Yeah.
campaign already. I mean, we have a member of the Senate, who was her colleague in the Senate on television calling her a ding dong.
Yeah.
We have a
Hmm.
president saying that she's not bright and all of this stuff. This is the vice president of the United States who has a longer
Yeah.
political resume of just about anyone in Washington
Yeah.
and beyond, in state, local, and federal government. And this is how she's being treated. Tara, so
It's
how
Hmm.
infuriating. It's
it
infuriating.
is. It is.
It
So
is.
but at the same time, we are seeing women lead. We saw
Yes.
the
Hmm.
Win with Black Women call that took
Yeah.
place. It seemed minutes after
Yeah.
Harris got into the race, which set
Literally.
the standard
Yeah.
for all of these other calls, all this other
Hmm.
galvanization. It reminded me how in South Carolina in 2020, it was Black women that were like, okay, enough of this Democratic, nonsense. We
Hmm.
need to pick a candidate because we need to beat Trump. And that
Hmm.
is what happens. So if women are the ones that keep having the power to move and galvanize, then why are they being left behind, Tara?
This is something that I think has changed the dynamic since 2016, because that was a pre-Roe time. Now that we are post-Roe and we're in this Dobbs era that has taken rights away from women, I think there's been an awakening. Now, Black women have always been woke, right? That was kind of where the term came
We've
from.
had to be.
We've
right? Had no choice.
We
We're
had
born
no
woke.
choice. To A'shanti's point, the system was not built for us. And so we've always had to kind of carry this huge burden on our backs to be the ones who made our own ways, took care of our own communities, and had to build our own networks. And structurally, there were things that made it that much more difficult for us. The whole idea of having to be 3 times as good. And now to see that, I see white women beginning to realize the folly of their ways in the voting space, because it was white women that got Trump elected in 2016, that +2 in 2016. And then for white women to be +7 for Trump in 2020 was pretty remarkable, given the failures of the Trump administration and the failures of COVID that literally cost people's lives. So this time around, though, now it affects them in a way that it didn't really impact them in their minds before, with the rights of our reproductive rights being taken away. And now they're not only coming for that, they're coming for IVF, they're coming for contraception, they're coming for no-fault divorce. So now you have white women in America going, oh, wait, hold on a second. Oh, yeah, this affects us too. So I think we need to pay attention a little bit more. Black women have been leading the way here, and we're so sorry. Like the white women's call that came a couple days after that, was interesting that there were a lot of folks that were going, you know what? Okay, you're right. We have to step it up. So I'm encouraged by seeing that. And for us at the Seneca Project, that kind of encompasses why we exist. It's that we need to embrace everybody, because together as women, we can win. And over the weekend, I was rather animated in response to Donald Trump calling Kamala Harris a bum, on top of all of the other disgusting racial and sexist attacks that Republicans had been levying against her since her emergence to the top of the ticket. The DEI insult, that's an insult now. That's the code word. It's not CRT anymore now. It's DEI. The idea that JD Vance would say she's done nothing but collect a government check. I'm sorry. Like, stop it. You were in the Marines. What do you think? Who do you think paid your bills? That was a government check too. So stop it. Kamala Harris was elected to almost every one of her offices. The people chose her. She's not a DEI candidate. And she's not a bum. Like, how dare you? How dare Donald Trump, of all people? And I think women are looking at this situation and saying, we're sick and tired of mediocre men failing up and getting the benefits of the way the system has worked, where we as women have had to work 3-4 times as hard and still have to face those same questions about our ability and our whether we deserve to be there or not. I think a lot of women, not just Black women overall, I think, are sick and tired of that. They're tired of it. And this election with Kamala Harris, and I don't agree with everything Kamala Harris has stood for policy-wise. I come from a very right-of-center ideology, but I don't care about any of that now, because that's not what matters. What matters are the basic fundamentals of humanity, equality, our constitutional rights, and democracy. That's what matters. We can fight out marginal tax rates and healthcare policy later. I welcome those discussions. We should have them. But the fundamentals, it's life or death for us. And as women, I think we need to unite. And you're seeing that consolidation in ways that we haven't seen in a very long time.
Yeah. So this podcast is about solutions. And that is one of the ones that I am seeing right now that I think is such an important solution, which is finding the commonalities. And that's why I wanted to have someone, the two of you, one of you is right of center, the other is left of center, but you are united on this. And I feel so strongly about that. Listen, I believe that Black people, Black women, everybody has the right to choose whether they are conservative or liberal or moderate. I believe that everybody has the right to want limited tax policy, or to want a stronger military, or to want more social programs. That is, I believe Black people should have the freedom to pick that. But the problem right now is that one party has made such existential attack on the very way of life that affects the people at the bottom the most, and the people
Mhm.
at the bottom tends to be women and people of color, that the party has robbed Black and brown folks of that right. Right, it's not me casting dispersions, right? I used to defend Black Republicans all the time, but the party has moved to a place
Correct.
that it is threatening everyone, but particularly the people who are most marginalized in this moment. So how do you get more people aboard this sort of unification? Because some people may just see me and just write me off as being somebody who's on the left and not want to listen to me. How do we do more of what the two of you are doing, which is building a bigger coalition in the spirit, in the quest to protect our democracy despite the differences? Ashanti, why don't
Yeah.
you start?
This woman is bigger than us. It's
Yep.
bigger than all of us. And that's why we're seeing these huge mobilization calls. I mean, the white women call, I thought it was great to see because in 2016, after Trump got elected, I was political director at Emerge and I was doing our annual event. And one of our guests got up and she said, Ashanti, are we just going to see this huge surge of white women running for office and wanting to take over things? And I said, no. And she's like, but so many of them voted for Trump. I was like, they were voting to protect the patriarchy. They were voting to protect their white husbands, their white sons, their white nephews, their white grandsons.
Mm,
That is what they were voting for and thinking that it was going to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
But I
yep.
will tell you very soon, they will realize that there's no protection for them. At the end of the day, that it is about them. And that is where we're at in this moment. That's why we saw over 200,000 white women get on that call and say, we got to get our ish together because we didn't listen in 2016, especially when the Black women were trying to tell us what was going to happen. And now, oh my gosh, the leopards are eating my face. They're
Mm-hmm.
trying to take away my
Right.
IVF, my birth control. What's going to happen? My daughter now can't go to college in that state because she doesn't feel safe. It became real for so many
Mm-hmm.
women. And Project 2025 is out there. Obviously, over 900 pages. It's a lot, but people are making it easily digestible. It's just the white male patriarchy. It's the foundation of this country that they want to take us back to.
Yep.
And we're seeing it with the Supreme Court decisions. We're going to do it from the judicial end. We're going to do it from the policy end here at the federal level. We're going to do all of this at the state level. It is a game plan, and they are bold about it and unapologetic about it. And we have to be the same way by saying absolutely no. This is
Yeah.
not the country that we are going to live in. And we may not all agree on everything, but we know we're not going to go backwards.
Yeah,
And
and
That's
that's where
Tara,
you
I
all
want
want to
to make
take
that
us.
point about that coalition and back to Seneca,
yeah.
right? We were saying how before white women were protecting the patriarchy, the white
Yeah.
patriarchy. That's exactly what happened at Seneca. Because
Mhm.
at first, Frederick Douglass was welcomed into this
Right.
movement until he was
And
invited out of it.
that's right.
Because once the white men were just like, okay, well, we're okay with white women voting
Yeah.
because they're going to vote with us,
Yep.
but we're not so cool with Black people voting,
Uh-huh.
and that caused the schism in that movement. How do we bring men on board and keep them on board? Because we've seen a lot of men with, the white dude's call was popping,
Yeah.
right? So we
We call them
are
dojo
seeing them on
dudes.
board. How do we bring them together and make them a part of this mission
Yeah.
and avoid that kind of schism?
Right. I mean, and that schism continued on even with the Black women and the white women
Yep.
later on in the suffrage movement with Ida B.
Hmm.
Wells and versus Alice Paul and all of them. And if anyone has ever seen the show Suffs on Broadway in New York, please go see it. It's fantastic.
Yep.
But that same thing, but yet the Black women still remained steadfast. We said, no, we're not going to go to the back of the parade. We're going to march in front, get
Hmm.
over it. But we were still there in solidarity. At least, okay, it's a step, but it still took another 40 years for us to get the full right to vote. But we remained steadfast and vigilant because we had to. And we're back into that position again now, where we have to remain steadfast for the good of everybody, because If we're going to be a United States of America in pursuit of happiness for all of us, we the people, it's we the people now against Donald Trump, Trumpism, and the authoritarianism that is threatening our democracy. We are imperfect, yes, but we will never be able to move forward in achieving that more perfect union if we go backwards. And at Seneca, we have a couple of our ads, and I hope folks go and take a look at them and support us at senecaproject.us, where in one of our, like, our reoccurring theme is we won't go back. Not no, but hell no. And to see Kamala Harris now, and a lot of those concepts came before we knew that she would be at the top of the ticket, but the idea is pretty universal. Women are saying we're not going back to that. And Trumpism represents regression. And women are going, no, 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 we're not going back to that. There's just way too much the legacy of what women who came before us had to fight for. We're not erasing that legacy. And how do we get the male allies involved? Well, a lot of times, well, research has shown that the relationship between men, dads, and their daughters is one of the most powerful bonds, and it leads to the most persuadable in attitudes. So even more than between men and their husbands and their wives, between their siblings, nope, daddy daughters. And
Mm,
those girl dads are being forced now to make a decision about their voting behavior will impact the future that they leave to their daughters. So forcing the conversation to that as opposed to their tax cuts or however they feel about the border or whatever other thing that may animate them, that has animated them in the past, national defense, all of those things are important policy issues. But now they have to look their daughters in the eyes and justify voting for someone who wants to subjugate them as second class citizens or someone who
mhm,
wants to continue to take their rights away from them.
mm.
That's a very powerful, persuadable decision that they need to face. So I think that by talking to those girl dads that are persuadable, that is a powerful way of bringing them into this because it's so much bigger. To Ashanti's point, it's bigger than just us. It's bigger than just
Right.
now. It's about the future you want for your daughter and your granddaughters. And that's another aspect of the messaging and who we're talking to at the Seneca Project.
So, Ashanti, talk a little bit more about the responsibility of men, because when so often that these issues that are driving this conversation right now, right, reproductive rights, access to childcare, the gender wage gap, all of this, it's it's put on women as if it's only
Mm-hmm.
our problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the responsibility of men in this moment.
Yeah. I talk about this all the time because whenever women are in elected office and they're leading on issues, it's, oh, those are women's issues. Oh, equal pay, that's a woman's issue. Childcare, that's a woman's issue. School board things, that's a women's issue. Those are family issues. Those are community issues. Those are everyone's issues. And that is the one thing that I make clear is these decisions impact every single person. And I love seeing the men step up. We have so many great male supporters at Emerge. We call them the men of Emerge. They're so fabulous. But I'm not going to lie, just last night, seeing all of the white men on their
Mm-hmm.
call. And then on Sunday and the Sunday before, there was the Win with Black Men call. It just did something for me just to literally see them being vocal and proud about unapologetically standing a black woman. I don't think people realize how huge
Yes.
that
Yes.
is. I mean, it makes me want to cry. It's huge. And on the white men's call, I just appreciated them saying the other guys, they're trying to say they're the white men of America, that this is what it means to be a white man. No, us here, this is what it means to be a white man, to show up for Kamala Harris, to show up for our daughters, to show up for our wives, to care about these issues. You know, undoing that toxic masculinity that is being really, really pushed out there, let's be honest, to the point where it's impacting young
Mm-hmm.
boys, where they get on social media, YouTube, and they're being fed all of this stuff about who you are, who you should be as a man,
Yeah.
particularly a white man. And then have all these other guys be like, nah, like, look at me. Like, I'm good. My life's great. And I'm nothing like that. And you can be
Yep.
too. So we need the men just being very vocal, because you should care if the women in your family aren't getting equal pay, because that's less money they're bringing home. That's less things that your family can do. You should really care about, are you going to be able to see your child when you send them off to school? Are they going to come back home? That
Mm-hmm.
is something you absolutely need to care about. No fault divorce, a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really want the women in your family having to stay in abusive marriages?
Crazy.
It is real.
Yeah.
So
It's right there in
our
black and white.
men, it is so right there, and we need for them to speak up and redefine, what does it mean to be an American man during this time. And I'm so thankful to all of the men who are stepping up. I think we got the Latino men call today. That one's going to look really fun. But also on my feed, I've been sharing all of the organizing events. And just to see the men be like, here's our call. It's our call. Yo, show up. Men to the front.
Yeah.
Yes, men to the front. That's what we need this
Yep.
election cycle.
Yes, we need men to the front. Women have been stepping up to the front with whatever power we have
Since
since
the
the beginning. So
beginning,
we need
right? Who
men
stepped
to,
up when men
since
went
the
to war? It
beginning.
was women, right?
Yes.
Who's
Yeah.
Women
been
have been
stepping up,
stepping up.
carrying this
Yes.
country on our
Yeah.
backs for generations. And we're about to do it again. Unless time, come on, man, come. We'll show you how it's done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, come
Yes. Come
on.
on.
Follow
That's
You're
follow the
right.
up.
lead. Follow the lead. Oh my
You're
goodness.
up.
I
Let's
wish we had
go.
hours more for this conversation, but I am so thankful for both of you for coming to talk about how we move forward with more parity, more equality, and why that is so necessary for our democracy to be saved. Thank you to you both, Tara Setmayer and Ashanti Gholar.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Wow. So, what I really appreciated about that conversation was the tone and the optimism. We have no illusion about the work that lies ahead to not just ensuring that women have representation in the political power centers of our society, but the fact that that work is now in action. We are seeing examples of it. We're seeing people buying in. And that is what motivates people. That is what builds that enthusiasm. And that's what leads to solutions, right? And that's what I'm so happy to see. Listen, those who read my columns and see my commentary on television know that during that month of Democratic disarray, I was really unhappy with what was going on. I was unhappy in part because I saw most of the calls for the Democrats to switch candidates past the point of the primary coming from people both inside and even outside of the Democratic Party itself, but it seemed to be driven primarily by men, by white men in particular. And it was at a time where I was hearing from and seeing the comments of Black women who have been a part of the movement and pushing the movement, who has said, hey, we have been on the ground. We've been doing the work. We've been engaging voters. We've been carrying these primaries and focusing folks on the threat that Donald Trump presents. And to have other people come in seemingly from the top, from their power structures, hi George Clooney, and saying, no, 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 you need to do things differently, without promising to be a part of the solution once that change happened, if it were to happen, really freaked me out. I wasn't sure that that would be a good idea. But the motivation and the engagement and the unity that immediately followed uh, has been really remarkable. I too have been heartened to see the calls coming from Black women and white men and different groups, Latinos and Latinas and everyone who really understand, even if they have differences ideologically, just like Tara and Ashanti. They don't agree on things policy wise, but they agree about the threat to our democracy and what it takes to protect it. And I want to see those people continue to unify and motivate to this specific, clear goal. And I think if we do that, not only will it help protect democracy in this election and beyond, but it shows us a blueprint to how to solve problems like this and how to build that unity that can be replicated and carried on and applied to the next crisis that we face, or maybe even prevent that next crisis that we face. And that is what Justice by Design is all about. I'm Kimberly Atkins Stohr. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Don't forget to click here to subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think about it. And certainly subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We will have episodes dropping every Friday. And don't forget to like as well as subscribe, because that helps other people find us. Join us next week right here, Justice by Design.